performance. If you have not followed his Triple H horse racing podcast, you're missing out. It's one of the best podcasts in the country.
Good evening and welcome to episode 36 of Horsin Around right here on the HHH Racing Podcast. I'm your proud host, Howard Kravitz, along with co-host from the Saratoga Special and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Mr. Paul Halloran. Paul, how you doing tonight? It is never too early, my friend, to talk about Kentucky Derby. I see you have a very appropriate hat on. We are, about 5.5 months away from the Derby, Paul.
That's all, huh?
That's it. Look, it's always exciting to talk about the Kentucky Derby, and the main reason we're on here tonight, ladies and gentlemen, live on Monday night, thanks for watching, is a part one of a two-part series here on the HHH Racing Podcast to discuss Kentucky Derby future wagers. Paul, last time I checked, last year was quite the interesting Derby future situation for our podcast.
There's no one who's had two better future bets without winning the last 2 years than you.
Well, I guess that's a side-handed compliment, but I will definitely take that compliment.
No, I mean it's like when a horse doesn't win, you say, "Well, he ran the best race." You're running the best race, but not cashing. It is such a imperfect science, if you will. As you said, 5.5 months, 2-year-olds, so much can happen. And I've always maintained, Howard, that the biggest challenge with these bets is getting them to be one of the 20 in the gate.
There's absolutely no doubt about it. And I was just kidding about the side-handed compliment. I could not be more proud of what we've done here the last 2 years on the podcast, especially last year. I mean, look, if you handicap a 2-year-old race right now, Paul, for tomorrow in a 10-horse field, and you're right with a bunch of horses you don't know anything about, you'd be happy with that, let alone try and do it 5.5 months from now with, an entire crop of current 2-year-olds to be 3-year-olds to worry about. But please make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button on the bottom right-hand side of the screen, notification bell on the top right here on YouTube, and smash that like button. Of course, you can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor. Great tip sheet. Look below the video player for our tip sheet information, and you can find our information on our website, hhhracingpodcast.com. Paul, here's what we're going to do today as part one of our two-part series, and I have a sort of a rundown in front of me. What we're going to do is talk about, first of all, who's offering the Kentucky Derby future wager this year for 2025, a brief podcast history, a brief history of people watching. Why should I listen to this guy Howard and Paul talk about future derbies? I'll talk a little bit about what we've done in the past, or what I've done more specifically in the past. What kind of horse you're looking for if you're going to bet a Kentucky Derby future. And I have some stats and a little bit of history to talk to. Then we have some special guests coming on, Paul. We've got from West Point Thoroughbreds, and rumor has it they know how to find horses that have stake possibilities. Of course, they had a horse named Flightline a few 2 years ago, but Jason Blewett, who's executive vice president or one of the vice presidents of West Point Thoroughbreds, is going to come on live here, a good friend of the show, friend of mine, Paul, to talk about a very exciting Derby future prospect who won yesterday in a stake out in California. The horse is named Bullard. We're going to talk about that horse a little bit, and West Point Thoroughbreds. And in addition, of course, we can't talk about West Coast horses and the Derby without talking about Bob Baffert, along with two of our guests. They are hosts and co-hosts of Pacific Horse Players right here on our network. Mr. Noah Maher and Ryan Anderson will be joining us to give their perspective, Paul, about the Baffert effect. Of course, Bob Baffert back in the fold in the Kentucky Derby this year, Paul, and that he would be loving to win the 2025 Kentucky Derby next year for sure.
I think if he could have 10 out of the 20 in the gate, he'd be just very happy. And I got to tell you, you know what? It's a long way off, but
it is.
There's a part of me that, first of all, you always root for the story, and it would be quite a story for Bob to walk into that Kentucky Derby museum for the winners party.
Can you imagine? That would be unbelievable.
Well,
Michael Austin's already claiming him as his Derby horse. Well, I'll tell you what, Michael, you're not getting the odds that you might want, but we're going to talk about that as well. So let's just get right to it, Paul. Again, we have some guests coming on in about 10 minutes. The first thing I want to do is start talking about who's offering the bet. Let me take the banner off. Actually, I'll leave the banner on the screen. There's some changes here, Paul, and I got to tell you, this is not good news for yours truly, and I already broke the news to you. Paul, I think they're on to us. And without sounding arrogant, if people don't think that our bet last year had an effect on the Derby future pool, I would beg to differ. Although, Paul, I don't have any concrete evidence, and as a journalist, I probably should, or you should. But anyway, last year we made a certain bet, and let me go ahead and bring it up on the screen. And like I said, you had to bear with me just a little bit because I'm going to be talking about different things. So let me show everyone the bet we made last year. And by the way, this is very important. Let's get this off the chest right now. A week from tonight, Paul, 1 week from tonight, Monday the 25th, I will be revealing our podcast Kentucky Derby future horse for 2025. It is not happening tonight. We're not going to reveal our horse tonight. We're going to reveal our horse next week. Today is like the precursor into that. But last year, Paul, of course, you know what happened. And most people that follow this podcast know. And if you're new to the podcast, let me tell you what happened. So last year, there was our bet. This is a real thing. We were able to get 150 to 1, Paul, and you can see the date at the bottom of the screen there. This was made November 25th, almost a year to the day, actually, last year, on a horse that just broke his maiden called Sierra Leone. We got 150 to 1 on him through Caesars, and we were able to bet maximum amount at the time, which was $1,000. And we were live, of course, to $151,000 to Sierra Leone in the Kentucky Derby. Let me take this off the screen because it's still making me a little bit sick to my stomach. So we all know what happened, of course. It was an unbelievable thrill. I consider it a great achievement, even though we lost by half a length, just to be alive to that. Of course, I was there live with a bunch of other people. It was heartbreaking. It is, and I can only imagine, Paul, will be my worst, the worst beat, or the best bad beat, I suppose you could say, in the history of my betting. I can't think of anything that'll be worse than that, Paul.
That's a lot. And to your earlier point, them being on the hook for 150 grand on a $1,000 bet, you bet your ass that affects the way they do business. I don't care if it's Caesars or South Point, or, when Caesars is obviously in a position to absorb a hit like that better than a smaller operation. But those guys, just read Chris Andrews' books. He's got 2 out. They're very good. Those guys they're not into getting beat for 6 figures at a time. So
no, they're definitely not. Now this year, there's a major change, and it's not for the better, literally. Last year we made our bet through Caesars. Now you can't bet through Caesars unless you are a resident of Nevada, or you live in Nevada, or you have a proxy, which is someone that can make a bet for you in Nevada, which is what we have. And I don't want to mention names, it's not important, but we have someone there.
We got people.
We got peeps, right, that can make bets for us. This year, last year there were several different organizations that had future Derby bets. This year is a major change. This year, Circa, if you're familiar with Las Vegas, is out of the Derby game. They are not offering any Derby bet futures at all, including in the spring. The only people that have live future Derby bets in the United States is Caesars and Twin Spires. Of course, they have their future Derby pool. The Twin Spires Derby Future Pool 2 is going to be in 2 weeks. It's going to be in 2 weekends from now, basically right after Thanksgiving weekend. Future 1 is already out. That happened the weekend actually happened right before and during, actually right before the Breeders' Cup. Sorry, it's before the Breeders' Cup. So
it closed just before the juvenile was run.
Of course. So it closed before the juvenile.
Wait a minute, Howard, are you saying the other ADWs in the U.S. don't have it?
No, they do not.
It's
Future
just
Derby?
Twin Spires.
Correct.
Because last year I bet it on Naira Bets.
I don't know if I don't know when you made that bet, but to my knowledge,
Well,
at least
no, last year, not this year. Last year.
no, I know. Was that in the spring or was that in the like before the new year started?
No, it was a future. Yeah, all those pools were up on. Yeah, Terry says Naira ties anyway.
Okay, so
you folks are about to get an unprompted rant that would have lasted the whole show if that were the case.
okay,
so.
but it's through Twin Spires, like it's one Twin Spires.
It's an ADW. They're the hub.
I'm not
correct.
saying you can't make the bet anywhere. I'm saying the people that are offering it or originating.
It's all one pool. I hear you. Yes,
it's one
correct.
pool. Okay.
Yeah.
So no one is doing it other than Twin Spires and Caesars, at least where they're originating from, or the people that make the lines, I guess is the best way to put it, Paul. Until the spring when Westgate will get involved in the spring and maybe some others. Now there are sites across the pond that you could get interested in, but again, you have to have an account through them or know someone, etc. I was just talking about United States. So people are saying Naira offers bets from Churchill. I'm talking about people that actually create the bet, like different options is what I'm referring to, Paul, right? Of different odds is what I'm referring to. So again, Jeff Amsler said Naira and CDR partners in tote. It would be unusual if Naira didn't take the bet. That's not what I'm inferring, Jeff, but we already cleared that up. Okay. So here's the other big deal. Last year we got 150 to 1, and our guy in Vegas that made the bet, who's very familiar with what goes on out there, is pretty sure that gentleman or that woman that actually I think was a man that we made that bet in is probably no longer with Caesars. I'll just leave it with that because the fact that we were able to get that was a big break. Now, the reason we were able to get it is because he just broke his maiden. No one really knew about the horse really, and that's part of the reason. But they don't want to be out for 150 grand again, Paul. So Caesars is offering some large wagers or some large odds, but in general, they're not. So let me show everyone pool one. Actually, before I do that, so that's who's offering the bet. Let's talk about the podcast history. And we've got people in the background waiting. I'm going to bring them on, especially our guest first, and we can get back to this topic in a minute. But our podcast history is pretty solid. Last year we had Sierra Leone, who, by the way, has won $6 million now, Paul. He was the second choice in the Kentucky Derby at 4.8 to 1 and finished a heartbreaking second. We made that bet in November, almost 6 months before the Derby. Actually, 5.5 months before the Derby. In 2022, I made a bet for the podcast with a horse named Tappet Trice. I made that bet in December, almost 5 months before the Derby. He was second choice in the Derby at 4.5 to 1, finished 7th. Really not a big factor in the race, unfortunately. He was goofy then. He's still a goofy now, but he's won $1.8 million. So it's not like we picked some kind of bum. Then in 2021, before I got the whole podcast involved, I had a horse called Command Performance who finished 4th in the juvenile at 3 to 1 odds, lost to Corniche, and he just didn't quite develop in his 3-year-old season, but he's won $457,000. Coincidentally enough, Paul, he actually just ran a 10 claimer on Sunday at Aqueduct. It's really quite amazing. The other horse I'll mention, then we'll bring on our friend from West Point Thoroughbreds. I'm assuming he'll be back in the fold here in just a minute. Let's see if you remember this horse, Paul. This was the first Derby future I ever made in my life. It was in the early 2013 with a horse that finished 4th in the Kentucky Derby, actually. That horse was named Normandy Invasion. You remember that horse, Paul? Normandy Invasion had a pretty good 3-year-old campaign, finished 2nd in the Wood, and I had him at about 50 to 1 in the Kentucky Derby, and he finished 4th that year. So I've not made a future bet every year, but my biggest or my best finishes have been in the Derby 4th, 2nd, and 7th. Not bad when you're making bets 5-6 months in advance, if I may say so. But before we talk more about our podcast and the strategy, let's bring on a special guest that we have on. And you want to talk about Derby future. I got some news for this guy that he may not know. There's a horse, Paul, that is very, very exciting right now. Won a big race yesterday at San Anita in the Grade 3 Bob Hope. The name of this horse is called Bullard. I'd like to bring on one of the partners of Bullard. He is the executive vice president, moving up in the world, just like Bullard from West Point Thoroughbreds. Let's bring him on, our good friend, Jason Blewett. Jason, you must be in a good mood. How you doing today?
No, it's been good. It's good to see you, Howard. Always good to see Paul. I enjoyed listening to, your recap. I guess sort of your life's work when it comes to picking out a Derby winner months in advance. And I will say, so the race at Del Mar last night, the Bob Hope with Bullard, Howard, and we know you have a thing for Gun Runner and Gun Runner Colts, but you texted me not long, maybe a minute or so after they hit the wire, like that's a nice horse you guys have. So no, in a great mood today, and yeah, we'll look forward to following him early in 2025, and hope he stays healthy.
Well, I got to tell you, I did some stats. Let's look at the PPs, and then we'll show the race a little bit, and I'll let you talk about West Point Thoroughbreds. And I want to quick apologies, Jason. I did not know that you were executive VP now. I was going to first call you like sales rep, but man, you are moving up, man. Congratulations. It is an unbelievable organization. It might have been like several months now. So again, I apologize if it's been a while, but that is awesome for you. And Paul, I had the pleasure of seeing Jason and Tom Bellhouse and Terry Finley, just a great group of people with West Point at Saratoga last year. And Jason, I look forward to seeing you again down in Florida this year. But let's talk about Bullard, Jason. Put him up on the screen here in just a second. This is a very, very talented horse trained by Michael McCarthy, who I don't think really gets the respect he deserves, frankly. Jason, he's an excellent trainer, one of the best dirt trainers out on the West Coast. Bullard is a gun runner out of a Warriors Reward mare, Rev D'Amour, who I believe did not run. She's actually unraced, but Warriors Reward was a real nice horse as well. And Bullard looks like something special, assuming he can get the distance. Why don't you talk about the thought with this purchase price of $675, and just talk about how this horse has developed and the thoughts right now with with the partners at West Point and how excited you guys are.
Yeah, no. So we own him with 3 Chimneys, Vinny Viola, St. Elias, Mike Talla. He ran in Mike's colors last night at Del Mar. And, of course, West Point is in the fold. Look, paid a lot of money for him. He was a colt going back to September of 23 at Keeneland. You're buying, hopefully, to have a future Grade 1 winner and a potential stallion prospect. And so far, so good. Mike's done a fantastic job with him. Horse won his first start at Del Mar towards the end of the meet around Labor Day. And yesterday, although it was a small field, and I was anxious all afternoon going into this. I mean, one of my biggest clients owns a nice chunk of this horse on the West Point side, and yeah. So not only is it a West Point horse, but you've sold a very expensive horse to somebody you're very close with, and you want them to do well. I mean, there's definitely a lot of emotion involved. But so I was anxious all day. But at this point in a 5-horse field, seeing that 21-3 with 3 of them lined up, I was like, all right, he's getting the pace. And right about here, as Umberto Rispoli starts to ride him a bit, looked like he had a ton. And then 43-4, and even Larry's call, I mean, he was pretty emphatic when he 43-4. And I'm like, all right, here he comes, big boy. Come on, just get him to the outside. And he did the rest. It was a very impressive run out of him. And it looks like he wants more ground, too, like he was just getting warmed up at 7/8.
I wanted to freeze it right there for 2 reasons. One, and I had Bullard in a pick 5 that I hit, which wasn't anything special, but I was happy to hit it. Should have singled, but didn't. I actually used the Baffert first-time starter is the other one who, by the way, Jason, we're going to talk about Baffert later in the show, and you're welcome to stay on as long as you want. This number 4, Madacat Road, I thought ran a monster race as a first-time starter. That being said, I love that Rispoli kept Bullard to the outside, Jason, didn't mess around, didn't get cute on the inside. And I thought Bullard had a little bit of lead switch issues in his debut, which is absolutely fine. He's a baby. He's learning. He had a slight left lead. He was on his left lead a little bit, but I'll tell you what, he switched back to his right about here where I'm going to show, and just was much more professional, I thought, in his second start. And I love the way you see he's on his left lead here, but once he went to the stick right here, he switched immediately back to his right. And like you said, I know it was a 5-horse field and he got a setup. I don't care. This is ultra impressive.
very good effort out of him. And just reading post-race comments, we skipped running him back after he broke his maiden. He had a little bit of time between his maiden win and the Bob Hope last night at Del Mar. And, Mike felt as though the horse needed a little extra time coming out of his maiden win. And what I hadn't realized until just kind of reading, basically bouncing around the trade publications on various websites when I got up this morning, that McCarthy said, I was able to get 4 works into him. I really, in a perfect world, would have wanted 5. So, again, it probably doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, but I was thinking, wow, maybe he was even just a touch short and still powered home 89 buyer. Look, Mataket Road ran really big. The Baffert horse, Kalayan Bay, who Bullard beat first out. In terms of the grand scheme of things, the Baffert pecking order, that horse, I don't know he would rank so high. So my point is, look, races are going to get tougher, fields are going to get tougher, and you're going to have to, all roads lead through Bob Baffert out there. But no, I feel great heading into this horse's 3-year-old season. And you'd like to think the way he finishes his races and polishes his races off with the gun runner factor, trained by a guy like Mike McCarthy. You add all that stuff up, his best days are supposed to be in front of him once he turns 3.
I think so. Paul, do you have a quick question? I'm going to bring up Bullard's Equibase page so we can see the I want to show Warriors Reward, a little breeding. And then right now also, Jason, I want to bring on 2 great younger guys on this show that are West Coast specialists. They both have connections, live out in the West Coast, know West Coast horse racing. Let me bring that on our new show that we have started last month called Pacific Horse Players. Host Noah Maher and co-host Ryan Anderson. Say hello to West Point Thoroughbreds, Jason Blewett, guys.
What's going on?
Jason, what's up? Good to meet you.
Yeah, good meeting you guys. Certainly, and I'm sure this has been stated before, so it is probably the obvious, but always good to have some new faces and younger blood that loves the game. So yeah, I appreciate you guys getting your podcast off the ground. If we can help out in any way with West Point, Howard has my number. Howard, feel free to pass it along to Noah and Ryan. And yeah, good luck, guys, for sure. I will on my next. I like to run. And, occasionally we'll throw on a racing podcast. I am giving you my word. I will throw one of your podcasts on this week when I go on one of my runs here in South Florida. So,
well, Noah, now's the time to plug. When is Pacific Horse Players on?
It is on Wednesdays at 9:30 Eastern.
There you go.
Obviously, you can watch it as a replay, but if you want to come and tag along and comment in the live chat, you can do so at 9:30.
Right on.
And we're on the listening platforms also when you're running, Jason, of course, on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and whatnot. Paul, do you have a quick question for Jason about Bullard or West Point or anything in general? I'm going to bring up his Equibase page so we can talk about Warriors Reward and anything else you want to discuss.
Yeah, no, Jason, you mentioned his best days are ahead of him. Obviously, with being by gun runner, the distance going forward, you would have to think everything being equal is not an issue. The one issue, and it's hard to tell, but as he goes forward as a 3-year-old, I would think you guys would be looking to see if he can be, involved a little earlier. And that's, that's certainly not a concern now at 2, but, as we know how the derbies run, is that something you guys, as the prep season comes around, you'll be maybe looking for to see if he is able to get involved in the races a little earlier?
Yeah, perhaps when he's able, if he matures and keeps developing, maybe he becomes a little handier. The good news with him in his first 2 races, he's kind of cranked up his run at like around the half-mile pole, and he's been more than able to sustain it. So, I guess, that'd be probably a better question for Mike McCarthy. I think there's that sort of, maybe it's somewhat old and tired, but in terms of like a horse's style, not trying to crowbar a change. And look, stretching out and going 2 turns, he might find himself just a little closer to the pace anyway. And it does seem like he runs up inside of horses, no problem. He took dirt in his first race. His first race, all right, he was a little late switching leads, but he knifed through horses like he was an older horse that had raced 20 times in the past. And, even seeing how fast they went, looking at his cut right now, he wasn't that far off the lead. I think he's probably a little handier than maybe a deep closer, which in my mind, I kind of view him as a deep closer. So it's a very, very good question. But, he wasn't that far off like a blazing half yesterday.
Noah and Ryan, here's my main question for you guys. And Jason, I'd like you to respond, and then we'll let you talk about West Point. Anything you want to mention, we'll let you go for the night. Appreciate you hopping on here, Jason. Noah and Ryan, this horse is trained by Michael McCarthy. And before you guys came on, I think he's very underrated even still. He's had a lot of really good horses. We could talk about several of them. How do you think Michael McCarthy fits into the Derby picture? He's never won a Derby, Noah and Ryan. He's certainly had a lot of nice horses. And the reason I bring it up is, of course, at some point, he already has faced some Bafferts, but at some point, he's going to have to face some Bafferts to get points, maybe a good, Mandela horse or maybe a Sadler. But mainly out there, isn't it really Baffert and McCarthy on the dirt, Ryan and Noah?
Go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, it's, obviously, the West Coast, it's pretty much, you beat a Baffert and you'll get points to go somewhere. But I think Mike McCarthy's his 3-year-olds this year, and then his crops of 2-year-olds that he's had training have just improved year over year. So, and honestly, I'm kind of less scared of Baffert now than I ever have been. He just, he would always debut one of those at Del Mar that comes out with some mid-90 buyer as a 2-year-old on debut, but he hasn't really had that the past couple years here, and obviously now he's back at Churchill Downs. But I think Michael McCarthy's in with a real threat, and I loved the way Bullard leveled off once he switched leads. He still looks like he's figuring things out, and if he kind of grows into his 3-year-old year, which we've seen a lot of these gun runners, Sierra Leone is one who got better as he raced. Epicenter was another who just kind of got better the more he ran. I think Bullard fits right into that category. I know obviously that's some high praise, but just looking at him, he looks super green. He looks Jason, you mentioned in the debut, he knifed through horses. And then yesterday, he switched leads, but once he did, he looked like he really, he's a great racehorse once he kind of levels off and everything like that. So I think he's still growing into his body. But once he, keeps progressing, I think he's going to be a major threat.
But Noah, my other thing, and Jason, I'll let you to comment on this too. My only concern with West Coast horses in general, Jason, is, the field sizes out there are so small in general that I like a horse that has to deal with some adversity. That has to go between horses, that maybe gets bumped, that takes dirt. And my only concern with all the West Coast 3-year-olds is that in general, they're going to face very small fields out there, maybe until the Santa Anita Derby, which could be, 8, 9, 10. And Noah, I'm against horses that continually get very good trips, no matter how talented they are. Is that something that, am I nitpicking, or do you think that's something that, Jason and West Point should be legitimately concerned about? And if they are, would you recommend maybe them sending out to like Oaklawn or the East Coast to get that experience in a big field and deal with some adversity?
I think you probably just stick where you're at. There's only so many horses that you're going to face on the West Coast, but there's really not a ton you can do about it. But with the horse that you guys have, Jason, there's just a lot of things to like, especially physically. You could just tell he's got a very flexible hind end, and he really just reaches with those hind legs. So you can tell that there's some talent there. And like Ryan said, he's still figuring things out. I talked to you about this, Howard. I didn't really care how I finished. I just wanted him to switch leads in the stretch because it shows that he's progressing. It shows that he's getting a little more professional and figuring things out. But at this point, it still just kind of looks like his body's almost too big for him. So, there's a lot of things that are going on with him physically, and there's a lot of things that you should be happy about. Hopefully you guys get to the point in which you want to get to in the first weekend in May.
Well, Jason Noah's from Orange County, but he attends University of Kentucky in their equine studies program. I'm sure you could figure that out as he's talking about the action that the horse is getting. So, look, I'm not going to bring out a bunch of schmoes on this show, Jason. We got some high-quality young guys who know what they're talking about.
No, he's got enough of them right here.
That's what I got Paul for. But, Jason, am I nitpicking? You're going to have to face Bafferts at some point. I know you already have, but we don't know. He's got others. Like we'll talk about after.
Citizen Bull, dude, who's going to be 2-year-old champion, right?
Gaming was pretty right. He's got Gaming. He's got others. We're going to talk about some of his horses after you leave the show. What about the small field thing? Again, maybe I'm just nitpicking, Jason. I don't know.
I think you're nitpicking. Okay. Look, again, Derby Day, none of those horses, even if they're coming out of a 12-horse Arkansas Derby, none of them will have ever seen a spectacle like the first Saturday in May at Churchill Downs. And again, just looking at his first 2 races, he's taken dirt. He's been able to sustain a run for a pretty long way. So again, it doesn't seem like he's sort of like a one trick pony. Got a great setup last night, no doubt about it. The pace definitely helped him, but he's supposed to get stronger as the races stretch out and go a bit longer for a guy, Mike McCarthy, who, I mean, hasn't won a Derby yet, but I mean, out on his own, he's only trained for about a decade. And for him, I know he came out of the Todd Pletcher school, and that certainly off the bat likely set him up with some solid owners. But, City of Light was clearly the horse that put him on the map.
Jason, how about this in the Future Pool Derby one, in Future Pool 1? So don't get too excited, people. You cannot get these odds anymore. But in the Kentucky Derby Twin Spires Future Pool 1, Bullard was 109 to 1. Jason, I know you got a little slice of that somewhere, but
that is insane, dude.
That's pretty crazy. But would you like to know what he is as of yesterday? I talked to my guy in Vegas through Caesars. Right now, you want to take a guess what he is right now? Or as of yesterday, after the race, like last night?
After the Bob Hope. I mean, I don't know how specific that, they would. I'll say 20 to 1.
That's a pretty good guess. He's 28 to 1 right now in Caesars. And Jason, this is the last question. We'll let you go. Thanks for coming on. We're talking about future derbies and strategy, and people want to make a bet. I don't know if you've ever made a derby future bet before, but if you can just try to open your mind and ignore Bullard for a moment. I mean, how low would you be willing to go on a future derby 5.5 months in advance? Because I got to be honest, I love Bullard. 28 to 1 is completely nuts. I mean, if I told you right now, Jason, right now, that Bullard is going to be 25 to 1 and he's in the derby at 25 to 1, you'd be over the moon, right? I mean, he's in the Derby field. He's got a chance. I mean, I can get 28 to 1 on the day. This is 5.5 months in advance. That is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, in my opinion. No disrespect.
I mean, I hope come with all due respect, I hope come Derby time, he's a shorter price than 30 to 1 or so. I'd like to think, again, maybe he doesn't win every prep out there, but maybe wins the Santa Anita Derby. His figures keep getting faster and faster, so hopefully he's a little shorter than that. But it's a point well taken. I'm not a big futures guy. In fact, there might have been a couple along the way, just more of a goof if I liked the horse's pedigree or something like that, and they were a very big price. But I really, truly think the last future bet I made, these guys probably weren't even alive yet, was on Empire Maker in 2003. I mean, so we're talking a long time ago. Yeah, when you consider the twists and turns and the maze, and every day with a trainer showing up to the barn, you hope your horse is 100%. I mean, you guys know how fragile these animals are. So I would, if you like somebody, demand a price. I wouldn't want to take. Worst case scenario, if I was betting real money, I absolutely love the horse. 10 to 1 might be the shortest price I would take.
Okay. Well, Jason, I'll let you go. Before you came on, I mentioned that my very first Derby future for me was a horse. I think you were working in Naira at the time. Was Normandy Invasion was my first actual in 2012. It finished 4th in the Derby, lost to Orb. So that was I was pretty proud of that. I made that bet in about January or February of that year. Jason, anything you'd like to mention West Point Thoroughbreds, and we'll let you go. Any other 3-year-olds that are or 2-year-olds under the radar? Maybe you don't want to mention them, so you can get your nice Derby future horse.
I'm not like that. No, I
want anything that or how people can get interested in West Point Thoroughbreds. It is a higher price point, everyone. I do have my first horse ever with West Point Thoroughbreds. They are an unbelievable organization. We can talk later. And Jason, I hope we're going to talk a lot more about West Point on this podcast at some point. You and I will, talk later. But anything that you'd like to mention to the viewers and fans about any horses coming up that are 2-year-olds to be 3-year-olds, or just West Point in general?
Well, you can check out the website if you want more info. westpointtb.com. Stable's been on a good run. I mean, we had Battle at Normandy, win the River City, Integration won the Red Smith, both those horses, Pegasus Turf for my man Shug. probably on the radar, assuming Shug gives them the green light. We are running, and I'll wrap up. I know you guys got other stuff to talk about. We are running a twirling candy firster this Saturday at Churchill named Yinzer. $1 million Saratoga yearling purchase that Asmussen trains. And Steve, we had a stop on him a little bit over the summer. He was with Steve in the spring. Asmussen and his team loved him and had some minor 2-year-old baby stuff, but he's back. I expect a good race out of him. And I think even if he gets beat, because the race is 6.5, and I do think he's going to want a little more ground, I think he's a horse we're keeping an eye on. So maybe your next horse, dude, to take 250 to 1 on in the Derby, Howard.
There you go. All right. I like it. Just in case people know, first, full disclosure, the horse I have a very small piece of West Point Thoroughbreds. And part of it out of Jason's recommendation is a horse named Jenny's Angel, who I believe is a New York bred, a B Jersey filly who's had some minor 2-year-old issues and is going to be hopefully going to be training maybe the next month or two. And you guys like that filly. I'm excited to be a part of Jenny's Angel, Jason.
Yeah, we bought her in March. I mean, she worked great. Beautiful filly. She wasn't with her pedigree. It was more of a blue collar New York bred pedigree. I mean, she wasn't inexpensive. So yeah, we needed to give her some time. She's going to Clement, Christophe, and they loved her. And once again, they had her, maybe for 3 weeks or so earlier, late spring, early summer, and had to stop on her. But she'll be worth the wait, Howard. Don't you worry, my friend. We're gonna win the test with her.
Oh wow! I love
right.
That sounds good to me, Jason. Well, Jason, thanks for coming on again. Really appreciate it. We'll let you go for the night. I'll be talking to you off air about a few things, and hope to see you, my friend, in a little over a month down at Gulfstream.
Yep. Great seeing you guys, Paul. Always a pleasure. Noah and Ryan, good luck with your podcast. I definitely will check it out. And CEO Howard, man, you got it all going on, pal. Great work.
Thanks, Noah. Thanks, Jason. Appreciate it. Good luck with Bullard, man. I'll be cheering for you.
All right,
take care,
thanks, guys. See
all
ya.
right, bye-bye. All right, great guy, Jason Blue. I've known him for a long time, guys, and he formerly with Naira. He had to deal with Andy Sterling for years, Noah and Ryan. How about that? And Paul knows that because we got a few years on you. But anyway, Bullard looks serious, guys. I mean, we don't know, but I'll tell you what. If he can get distance, Noah and Ryan, I think he's gonna give these Bafferts a run for their money.
Absolutely, yeah. I like the way he ran, and as we're still on the Michael McCarthy kind of conversation, he had another winner yesterday at Del Mar, going 2 turns in a maiden special weight race, and that's journalism. And that horse is curling out of an Uncle Mo mare, so that horse is bred to run today, tomorrow, and into next week. So and Ricky Gonzalez was aboard that day, gave him a great ride, beat a good Baffert, beat a horse that Jackson and myself love for the Santa Anita Derby, and that's Rank, trained by Doug O'Neill, another horse bred to run forever. And then there was another horse in there. The name is leaving me right now, but that was I think it's going to be a really productive field. That race was. The top 4 finishers all look talented.
Baffert had a talented horse that didn't run great called Mellencamp, named after John Mellencamp. I'm assuming the singer. All right, Noah and Ryan, I want to ask you guys a question. Paul, I'd love your input. One of the reasons I have you guys on is to talk about the Baffert effect. Now, we already talked a little bit about it, and we're not getting into controversy. This is not the show for that. I just want to talk about the fact that obviously Noah and Ryan, Baffert wants to win the 2025 Kentucky Derby. Probably, I think fair to say, more than anyone in the world. Let's just call it like it is. Okay. He's already got Citizen Bowl and gaming. Citizen Bowl, of course, is going to be a 2-year-old champ. Matticat Road, I thought, ran huge, guys, yesterday as a first-time starter. And Noah, you know this because I sent you info. He had B+ and A- workouts. And he was working with a horse called Barnes, named after the assistant Jimmy Barnes, who was supposed to be something very special. I guess the question, again, we already talked about it, is you have to assume Baffert's going to have some horses qualifying for the Derby. But, Ryan, we also have to mention this. And this is where I wanted to bring in you, Paul. HISA is definitely affecting things in the world of horse racing. I don't know what's going on, but the fact is that there are a lot of Baffert horses recently that have been, not being able to train. They've retired. They've been injured. There's just been more issues than normal. Let's just call it like it is. I'm not saying he's doing anything nefarious. I'm not going there. But I guess the question for you, Noah, Ryan, and Paul, are all these Bafferts as trustworthy as they've been in the past?
Go
ahead, Ryan. I'll let you talk first, Ryan. Ryan, then Paul, then Noah.
All right.
You can be as politically or as not politically correct as possible, but I would just say be careful.
Yeah, I'll keep it. I'll keep it under wraps. No, I think that's a very reasonable concern to have with the Baffert horses, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that he's always been known for working his horses pretty tough. Not in a bad way. He wants to get the best out of the horses in the morning in the workout. Yes. He's not like the Steve Asmussen or Bill Mott who just kind of let them do what the horse wants. He wants them to get a lot of stamina built in these works. And
he does it early on, like he'll push
exactly.
2-year-olds, right?
Exactly, yeah. So, and he has them race against each other. So he has them, paired up because he has a barn that's really full of talented animals. So he has, A's go with A's a lot of the time, and it's, I don't want to say a war of attrition, but it's, it's a competitive morning workout. It's kind of like doing one-on-ones in football. It's not like doing a walkthrough. It's doing, really upscale or upbeat kind of competition in the mornings. And I think with those younger horses, sometimes they're, straight up just not ready for it. So I think that could lead to something. I think Heiss has really kind of reined in on their, they've been more consistent recently. So I like that, everything that we're seeing is, at least following a pattern now. I think as they kind of started off, it was a little bit, some things were out of left field, but I think now they've kind of, found a bit of a groove. And I like it. It's better for the sport to keep the animals healthy. So to answer your question, I guess it's a concern, with some of his young ones, because you want to make sure that they train on well. So I certainly wouldn't take a future bet on any Baffert horse. Right
well, that's my thing, Paul, because we're here mainly talking about future Derby bets, and we're going to reveal ours next week. These Bafferts are talented, but do you want to take 25-1 on a horse that might get injured in the spring? Anyone can get hurt, but look, you got to call a spade a spade. It is what it is right now, Paul, with Baffert.
Yeah, I think the reason you don't take him is value. That would be, if I liked one I'm with you. I don't want anyone that low at this time of year. But if I liked one, if I were willing to take 25-1, I wouldn't have any hesitation about taking a Baffert at 25-1. I really, and look, I'm not the president of his fan club, but and people, people could say what they want about Heisa. The release came out today. Every horse that was tested in the Breeders' Cup came back clean. Every single one. And of course, they're testing the winner and at least one random. And I'm assuming for those races, more than one other random. But every horse tested cleared. So that's good news, right? And that's got
absolutely.
That's not about Bob Baffert or about Mike McCarthy or about Chad Brown. It's about the game. But no, I wouldn't. If I were going to hesitate on a Baffert at this time of year, it would be price. And everyone's going to overreact now. Well, Citizen Bull looked great. Okay, we were all there. He looked great. Well, in my opinion, certainly the horse I liked in the race, I still believe the best horse in the race, was out of it the second the gate opened. So, maybe that won't. Maybe East Avenue won't fall next time, or almost fall next time. So, no, honestly, I don't think. Again, here I am in the position of defending Bob Baffert. I think that's a tad unreasonable to think that his horses would be any less likely to make it there than anyone else. And if that is your concern, Howard, he's got 2 or 3 times as many as anyone else. So the law of averages is still with you.
Well, he's also won the most Derby. What is he tied right now for the most Derbies? I believe I should know
he's
that.
He's had more across the finish line than anyone, but he's tied with Ben Jones, and I only know that because I just wrote about it. I just wrote the Breeders' Cup 23 chapter in my book. So,
nice. Okay.
Of which Bob was a key part. Obviously, as the trainer of National Treasure.
Of course.
So he's officially tied, but he's had 7 across the finish line on top.
Well, Noah, last year's a perfect example. Remember, everyone's like, well, if Baffert was in the race, he'd win easily. Muth would win by 5 or. Look, let's just call it like it is, okay? If Muth's in that race, he's not winning based on the pace scenario. And as it turns out, Muth is a nice horse, but he's not special. I think that's fair to say. And he had others, Noah, that got injured, and that was last year when he wasn't eligible. So I'm not saying I disagree with what Paul's saying, that it's less, that it's equally likely his won't be running. But the other point is he also has a lot more options, right? His bench is very deep, Noah.
I'll keep it short and sweet. Based off of his history and what we've kind of seen from his 2-year-olds, if none of them made the final 20, I would not be surprised.
Wow. You mean if he doesn't have a horse in the Derby?
No, if he doesn't, from the horses that we saw in the juvenile, if none of those horses make the field, I would not be surprised.
Oh, you mean the ones that were, okay. Yeah, I hear you. Look, and that leads to my last point that I want to make, and we appreciate everyone watching. We got a ton of people watching right now. Really appreciate. Please make sure you hit the subscribe button. Hit the like button below the video player, and subscribe, all that good stuff. Hit the notification bell, etc. I'm going to show, and I did a little research because it's my job, guys. I'm going to show the last 5 Breeders' Cup juveniles. Okay, not the replays, just the charts. And look how many of these horses, not only forget about winning the Derby, because they didn't win the Derby, weren't even in the Derby. Okay, so people are like, oh, I need to bet Citizen Bull. Sort of like you were saying, Noah. I should bet a Citizen Bull. I should bet even as talented as East Avenue is, and he might be an exception, or Chancellor McPatrick, but just because they didn't run well in one race doesn't mean they're not going to get to the Derby. But it's something to keep in mind. So look at this, guys. I'm going to show it. I'm going to make it nice and big so everyone can see. Okay. I'm going to go in reverse chronological order. This was last year's, here's last year's juvenile. Now, Fierceness was favored in the Derby, but he ran up the track. Okay. Muth, not even in. Locked, not even in. Timberlake was not in, right? Or was
no, not in.
Not in. Prince of Monaco ended up being a sprinter. I mean, none of these horses ended up being in the Derby, guys, except for Fierceness, right? That's one horse, and he was the favorite, and he was awful in the Derby. Let's just call it like it is, okay? Let's go the next year. Here's the 2022 juvenile. Forte, we all know what happened, guys, the day or two before, whatever. Cave Rock, nowhere to be found. National Treasure, no. Blazing Sevens we won the Preakness, right? We won the Preakness, but it was not in the Derby. I mean, look at these horses, guys. None of them are in the Derby, not even in the field, right? Okay, 2021.
Verifying wasn't in the Derby.
Verifying was.
He was in the Derby, but he didn't run well. Yes, he was in the Derby, ran poorly. Okay, Corniche got injured, right? Not in the Derby.
Yes.
No Papa Cat, no Giant Game. Command Performance, who was my horse, didn't get to the Derby. Look at all these horses, guys. None of them in the Derby. Not winning the Derby, not top 3, not even in the Kentucky Derby. These are all juvenile runners, right? In the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Now, the next race was an exception to the rule. This was a very good juvenile. Check out this juvenile, guys, when you think about it. Essential Quality and Hot Rod Charlie finished 3rd and 4th. Look at Jackie's Warrior was 4th. I mean, this was a serious Derby.
Rombauer won the Preakness.
Rombauer won the Preakness. And, guys, look who finishes last. I mean, yeah. Right? I mean, that was a classic. That was a serious Kentucky Derby, right? And the juvenile. And here's the complete weirdo disaster juvenile from 2019 who stormed the court, who actually ran on Sunday, guys, in his last race, and is going to stand. He's going to stand in California, by the way. Hats to Peter Erden for doing that. But this was just bomb after bomb after bomb. I mean, 8 Rings was a nice horse. Look, poor Dennis's moment. Affected, obviously, East Avenue as the big favorite from the rail who stumbled. But again, none of these horses, guys, even a factor in the Kentucky Derby. So that's a small sample size, guys. That's the last 5 juveniles other than this past year. Paul, you're the sooth of the group. What does that tell you?
Well, I mean, history says what? There's been two juvenile winners to win the Derby, 1 or 2. So I mean, it's. I think it's 1 or 2, right? It's not more than 2.
2. I was thinking juvenile to classic. That's on me.
But it's like the best player in Little League isn't the best player on the high school team, and the best player on the high school team doesn't necessarily make the major league. So, look at Justify won the Triple Crown without running as a juvenile, right? So that's the tricky part of these wages is we don't know who's out there. Now Barnes has been working. There was a lot of talk about him in the backstretch during Breeders' Cup week.
Yeah.
But we don't know. I wouldn't have known about Yinzer until Jason Blewett brought him up 10 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Okay. And, that's $1 million West Point purchase with Steve Asmussen. So, I certainly made note of that. I don't think we're going to get any price on him. We might get a price in the Derby. You're not going to get any price on Saturday with $1 million West Point horse trained by Asmussen. So, yeah, that's why, you do have to look for a price, as you, Howard, have done such a good job at the last couple of years with Tapatrice at 65 and Sierra Leone at 150. I mean, you just don't know who was out there. You don't know who you don't know.
No doubt. Charles Lockhart, we got a lot of people in the chat. Charles, thanks during the show. Ferocious has the talent. The question is who will mature mentally. He fought a last place, turning for home and finished 5th, passing 5 horses in the juvenile. Again, that's a horse that's taking a lot of money right now, and maybe he gets the distance. Do I want to bet him at 25-1 in the future? I mean, I'll give my final opinion at the end of the show, guys. I want to show one quick clip, and then we'll start wrapping up the show. This clip is from last year's episode 314 when we introduced Sierra Leone to the world, and I talked about this isn't about Sierra Leone. This is about what we're just mentioning, which is, do you want horses that were in the juvenile, or would you have horses that are maybe even unraced? So let me just show this about 30-second clip. I'd love to hear opinion, guys, just to help the viewers and listeners on what kind of horse they should be considering taking. There should be sound on this, guys. About 25 seconds from our show last year. Here it is coming up right now.
Here's the average number. I'll just make this full screen. The average number of races the Derby winner has run the last 6 years before December, Matt, 0.7. And believe it or not, 4 of the last 6 winners, or unofficial winners, of the Kentucky Derby had not run a race yet before December of their 2-year-old season.
I mean, guys, if people are looking at the East Avenues, look, East Avenue might win the Derby next year. From a future Derby perspective, for me, guys, absolutely no bueno at the odds that he's at right now, which is somewhere around like 15-1. No, thank you. I mean, it's crazy to me. That's just my opinion, guys. Go ahead and Noah, you can respond, whatever.
Yeah,
Anyone.
The PPs and the past performances would back you, but again, it's the unknown factor. You don't know. If you go that route, you're taking a hunch that there's someone out there who's going to be that good. And as you say, 4 of the last 6, whatever that number was, that's been the case.
So the question, Noah, as the equine studies major here on the show, is what kind of horse are you looking for? And again, if you're just joining us now, 1 week from tonight, ladies and gentlemen, Monday the 25th, as we wrap up the show here, we're going to divulge my top choice, our podcast top choice for the 2025 Kentucky Derby. And please keep in mind that obviously Noah, Ryan, and Paul, my selection, odds and value has to come into play in this type of bet, because you have to get, if you're going to hit this, you have to get paid. But Noah, what kind of horse in the PPs or in the pedigree page are you looking for, right, if you're going to bet a horse the next 4 weeks for next year's Kentucky Derby?
I always like to take a little consideration with pedigree, obviously. And then I'll try and look at them physically as much as I can. The thing with Bullard that I find so interesting is from when he was a yearling, I went on the King of September sale and found his confirmation pictures as a yearling. And then the winner circle picture that they just took from yesterday, he really hasn't filled out much. So that there's a lot of room to improve physically. He's going to get a lot stronger, especially kind of in the abdomen range, which they use those abdominal muscles to really reach under them, which is what I was kind of referring to the hind legs. And obviously you can kind of put together the further they reach, the further they go, the faster they go, in simple terms. But I like to take a look at that. And then obviously with the breeding, you try to look at some certain things with the dams, especially going longer, something I like to key in on. And I think a lot of people kind of overlook the dams and don't really run. But if you go into the dams pedigree and you go into like second generation, and you can see that the Grand Dam and the Grandsire had a lot of success, I think it's something that people overlook.
Ryan, is there a circuit you're going to be looking forward to in the next few months? I mean, Oaklawn and Fairgrounds have sort of emerged in the last 5 or 6 years. Gulfstream's been a little bit down, although Mage did win, but that was a bit of an anomaly. Do you think it could be a California horse this year? I mean, is there a circuit in New York? Again, has been a little bit down, but Sierra Leone came out of the wood. So I mean, sorry, he was in the he was in the Bluegrass, but he was in New York earlier in his career. Any thoughts on a circuit, Ryan? Or are you just be partial to the Santa Anita horses?
I mean, I do pay most attention to the West Coast horses, but for the couple things, whoever runs in the Bluegrass, I think that's typically a pretty telling race of who comes out of there. You know, in the top 3 or 4, they typically are kind of getting ready to peak into their best form, just going off the past couple years. And then, yeah, I want to see what horses kind of ship to the Arkansas Derby from the West Coast, because that's typically the stop that they make en route to the Derby. Obviously, mainly talking about Baffert, as he'll ship his best over there. But I know, some others will ship over to get those large, chunk of points when the time comes. So I'm looking forward to those. I would say Arkansas Derby and the Bluegrass the most. But I will be paying attention out on the West Coast when rank romps in the Santa Anita Derby.
Wow. Well, I'm going to pay attention to Fairgrounds, guy. By the way, East Avenue is going to Fairgrounds. I know that for sure. I'm going to be paying attention to him and the Brad Cox barn quite a bit. Here's the last thing I want to do, guys. I'm going to show odds from Caesars. This was before the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. So these are a few weeks old. I want to mention that, but just to give some people an idea, if you want to bet Caesars, again, it's mainly Caesars and Twin Spires are the people that are creating the odds right now. I know you can bet through Naira and other places, but they're not creating the odds. So guys, here's just for reference here. Again, this was before the Juvenile, and this is Caesars / William Hill. You see, Bullard was 18, which is crazy to me at that point. I believe he's 28 right now. There's Chancer and East Avenue. I mean, 8-1 and 9-1, guys. I'm sorry. That's just. It's not because they didn't run well in the Juvenile. That is just completely crazy. The reason why I want to bring this up, guys, is there's just a lot of, in my opinion, bad bets out here. Like Kalia Bay, I looked at all 70 Caesars horses, guys. I'd say of the 70 they have listed as of right now, like 25 of them are not going to get the distance at all. Like there's no way Kalia Bay can't even get 7 right now, guys. Now, maybe he's going to be better later on, but like Rated by Merit on the bottom is a horse maybe people don't know, a really talented Florida horse, but he's being Florida breds by like X amount in sprints. I mean, who's to say what the hell's going to happen there? I'll just show you a few others, guys, because this might be new to some people, or most people actually don't have these. Here's like the next page, like Moplex, Paul, nice New York bred, but 30-1. Immersive is listed at 33-1. I mean, come on. I mean, there's turf horses in here. Zulu Kingdom is 40. Zulu Kingdom can't even win turf, 2-year-old turf, high-class 2-year-old turf races right now, really. I mean, he's a nice horse, but I mean, guys, there's just, I guess my point is there's just a lot of really odds on here that people are like, oh, this is interesting. Like there again, you got Hot as Hell as a Euro. A Tip Top Thomas, I actually like that horse. We could go on and on, but my point is, guys, there's a lot of horses on here that are very precocious. I want no part of a horse that breaks his maiden by 4 or 5, going 6 furlongs with a 90 buyer right now. I much rather a horse like let's see, Sierra Leone, who broke his maiden with a 71, guys. That's my final thought. I'm looking for horses that are very lightly raced, that want to go long, that debut at least 7 furlongs. That's my thing. At least 7 furlongs, want to go long, and will get better and better as they progress. And for me, guys, I don't want anything less than 60-1. I have no interest in anyone less than 60-1. That's just my thing. That's all I got to say. You guys can wrap it up. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, another horse that I don't think you showed on the future bet, but I know was there, was the horse Barnes for Baffert, who made it onto that list off of one work, which is absurd. And then the other note on that is I will never bet a horse trained by Baffert that's named after somebody. Every single time, it's a terrible. Like I was really high on Barnes because of the breeding, and then I saw the name, and I'm off that horse forever. Dettori made a debut this past week,
yes.
Ran terribly. Miramati runs this weekend, and he just found out how to win a race. It took him like 10 tries. The list goes on. So I'm not gonna fall for that trap again. No, I know a horse you and I liked coming out of the Bob Hope was Madaket Road, who ran in that race pretty much because the maiden races wouldn't fill out there. But that was a great race on debut for Baffert for that horse on the dirt. And that's a horse that I look for going forward, being out of Quality Road. Yeah, Privman. There's a $2 million horse named Colmus who hasn't stepped foot on the track yet. I mean, the list seriously goes on. Every single time he names a horse after somebody, it can't lift a hoof. So Barnes is going to be a great sire, I'm sure. We'll make one start and then, go off to the shed or something. But the Kentucky Derby is the Bermuda Triangle of horse racing.
And that's not just with the futures. That's for game day, too.
It sure is. No, and Paul, I'll let you finish. I mean, if someone were to email me or call me and say, Howard, this was a stupid show, the whole future Derby bet is stupid, I'm not going to say I disagree. I mean, it's extremely speculative. To me, it's a lot more entertainment, Paul. This is a lot more fun. You get a horse. It's like a draft, right? You get to follow a horse through the Derby trail. It's just fun to watch and follow. I mean, if I'm not going to sit here and suggest it's a great bet at all, we just have been successful in the last few years with chance to win 4 and 5 digit scores. But I mean, it's obviously Noah. It's very, very highly speculative. So I'm not suggesting A1 bet.
Howard, if someone tells you that,
would put $1,000 on a horse 6 months in advance.
Howard, if someone tells you that, tell them A, Yellowstone was on last night, and B, Houston and Dallas might be one of the worst Monday night games of the year, if not the decade. So C, you got nothing else to watch, so be thankful that we're here giving you an hour.
There you go. No, any final thoughts on have you ever made a future bet other than last year with Cyril Leone? I mean, it's obviously very speculative, so people can do it. If people don't want to spend a dime on it, that's fine. I got no problem with it. I just think it's fun and it's a good case study of looking into the future. I think it makes you a better handicapper by trying to figure out who might win the Derby next year.
Yeah, no, I think it's a lot of fun to do your homework and see what you come up with. Obviously, it's very difficult to get to the position and even close to where we were last year. But to answer your question about the Derby bet, I would say no, considering Jason's one of his few Derby bets was before I was even born. So, but yeah, I just think it's an interesting thing to look at. And as horse players, we all want that praise. So if we can kind of find that gem, it gives us just the reason to come back and do it.
Well, I will close with this, ladies and gentlemen. This is called a tease in the business. I've already made my 2025 Kentucky Derby future bet. And it is, you'll have to wait till next Monday night, November 25th. I will announce it. I will show the ticket. Unfortunately, as we talked about before, I was not able to get nearly the size of the bet or the odds that I wanted, to be very honest, but I think it's still it's a nice bet. There's actually 2 horses I'm interested in. The second horse I'm interested in is not listed right now anywhere, but will be. And this is absolutely true because I sent out text and I can prove it. Bullard was absolutely on my list, guys. I just didn't want to take that low price. And this was when he was like 35, 40 to 1. It's just too low for me. If he wins, I'll be ecstatic and happy for West Point. But guys, I need bigger prices with this kind of bet 5.5 months in advance. Noah Maher, Ryan Anderson, Paul Halloran, thanks for coming on tonight. I know we went a little bit long, but it was a fun conversation to talk about. Next Monday night, we have shows Wednesday and Thursday, of course, as well. Noah and Ryan will be on Wednesday night, and Thursday, and a second show on Wednesday. But a week from tonight, again, Horsin Around will reveal our Derby future bet and talk about that horse. Thanks, guys, for watching. Crush your bets in the Kentucky Derby future if you decide to play. Take care, everyone. Have a great night. Bye-bye.
methods. If you have not followed his Triple H Horse Racing podcast, you're missing out. It's one of the best podcasts in the country.